So I'm going to go first. Our story began back in the early 80s when we started going to the little church on Highland. And that was before we had kids, and we had just moved to Minnesota. And Doug's mom, he's probably going to tell you more about this, but because it was his mom. But we finally settled at Nativity. And when we first started going there, people kept inviting us to go down for coffee after the service, which was down in the basement of the church. And I kept resisting for probably months before I finally, because I'm an extreme introvert, so I didn't want anything to do with these new people. But finally, one morning, Doug convinced me to stick around, and we went down for coffee. And everybody was very welcoming, and there was probably like 6 or 8 people around the table. And so that was like the first time I actually talked to the members of the church. And a lot of those members are still at Nativity at this time. So, and then in 1987, when we had our first son, and that got me a little bit more involved with the church. Like at that time, the parents were the people in the nursery. We each had to take a turn. If our child was in the nursery, we each had a day there. And then the church was so welcoming. Logan was kind of a very active child, you might say. And he would like get away from us some mornings at church. And one morning he ended up like running up to the altar and was underneath it. And Grant Robinson at the time just picked him up and carried on with his sermon like nothing was going on. I mean, he just, so. And
that is sweet. That's so sweet. So
Nativity to me has always been like that with kids. I mean, I know as a first-time parent, I was mortified that our son had the audacity to run up on the altar, even though there was only probably 30 people at the church, but I was embarrassed anyway.
Well, welcome the little children unto me, right?
Yes. So now I think our church is still that way with small kids or any child. You know, they don't really, it doesn't bother them that they might be crying or running around the building or whatever. But anyway, let's see. And then when Logan got a little bit older, he was like 3, then we had a second son, John. And that's when I got more involved even with the church. I volunteered with our youth group, and which gave us a lot of really good babysitters at the time, but which was not the reason why I did that.
It did work out.
But it did work. We did have some really great babysitters, and their parents actually, a lot of them still go to our church. So, and then also, I was asked to be on the vestry at the transition time between the little church on Highland and where we are at this time. And that was my first time I'd ever been on the business side of the church. And it's actually, you can actually see how the church is led behind the scenes. And now I'm on the vestry again for my second time. And people had asked me in the past to do it. And I've always said no. But for some reason, when Dana asked me, I just couldn't say no to her. It's like, okay, Dana asked me, I got to do it, even though I really didn't want to do it. Because I didn't really think I had anything to, give to the church.
It's hard to say no to her, isn't it?
It is very hard to say no to anything. But again, I did find it to be a good experience overall, because when I came on, the vestry had changed and they had different areas. And the area I was overseeing was the fellowship part of it, which has always been one of my passions at our church, is the fellowship part.
You're still leading that part, aren't you?
I am.
Mm-hmm.
My term is up in 2 weeks at the annual meeting. Then my 3 years will be over. So, because to me, the fellowship part of church is my way of serving God and his people. And over the years, like I volunteered at the family table, which was one of our first outreach programs at our church. And it was started in 1993. And it was just a monthly meal on the last Saturday of the month. But then in 2009, there was a transition time, and Amy Rates and Steve Rates and Doug and I began what's now our community cafe. And that is or was served every Wednesday night. And we had it on Wednesdays from Saturday because we were hoping, which happened actually, we were thinking that people from Nativity who went to the activities on Wednesday night, because we had like choir at that time and bell choir and youth group, and I can't remember all the other things we had on Wednesday nights, but there was a lot of things that parishioners were coming for. So we thought it'd be a way for them to get a quick dinner and visit with the community guests that we had coming. So that did help build our community with the outside community. And it was nice to hear their stories. And, and even to this day, it's like, we're still trying to keep in touch with the ones we have their phone numbers with. So I think that was a really good thing. And then providing fellowship also helps me to get to know new people, or different people that I might not have the opportunity to really get to know. So some of the other things I've been involved with, the biggie thing that really provided a lot of fellowship for our church was our annual gala. And again, I couldn't say no to our priest that asked me to help with that back in 2002 was our first gala, believe it or not. And it was off-site, and it was a fancy thing. And but over the years, it's kind of changed from being like a fancy party gala to just a party. And everybody who's ever been to one knows that they truly are a party. And every year we have a different theme. We decorate to that theme, and we try to have the food to that theme. And the committee members always try to dress with the theme. So not only was this like a really great fellowship opportunity and a fun party, but it was a major fundraiser. So it really did help with like everything. It was hard not to do one this year. We weren't, the same people said they weren't going to do it, but we actually had a theme. We were going to do the Roaring 20s. Little did we know, 2019.
Yeah, they roared all right, didn't they?
The Roaring 20s was going to be. So it's like, well, that was weird. But anyway, so other fellowship things that I've done in the past years are like the annual camp out that we'd have at Baker Park. We had an all-family camp out that we used to have anywhere from probably 10 to 12 families come for that. And that was a great time for everybody. And then I've also helped for planning progressive dinners that we have annually too. And part of fellowship is planning the receptions. And that's like receptions for retirements, graduations, and also a big one is for the funerals. We help with the planning of the funerals, which I find is very important for the family and the friends of the deceased to be able to just sit and relax and have a really nice meal and not have to worry about any of the food or the cleanup or anything. So anyway, so some of the other things I've done that I've helped with are like the church remodeling, like picking colors for the interior and the carpet and those kinds of things. And then I'm also in the bell choir.
When did the remodeling occur?
It's slowly been happening since
when we moved in.
Yeah, when we moved in, it started beginning to happen. And then Emily Durko, who used to go to our church, who was on this reading our stories a few weeks ago, she's an interior designer. So
Oh, well, there you go.
she was actually head of it.
Flicking the paper.
So anyway, so that's, and we're still in the process, as you can tell. I mean, there's a lot of things like Adrian and Kathy recently did a lot of the remodeling. They, did the bathrooms, and so we've sort of like toned it down and made it more peaceful. Hopefully, was the goal, is to make it a more peaceful space for everybody. Outside of that,
Nothing else on the
I think he took my notes away. So is my time up?
You can reclaim your time from your husband.
So anyway, the special things to me about Nativity has always been the people. Always. I've always felt welcome by everyone, and hopefully I am welcoming to everybody. And I've made a lot of good friendships over the years. I know Joyce was one of my very first friends. I don't know if she knows that or not, but I remember her and I used to go shopping for supplies for Family Table way back when. So I have a fond spot for Joyce for that reason.
You can unmute, Joyce, if you have something to say.
Anyway, that's my story. And like I said, I think the community of Nativity is a very caring and compassionate parish. So anyway, so that's my side of the story. And Doug and I did not compare notes at all. So he could have a whole different take on our story. So he didn't know what I was going to say, and I don't know what he's going to say. So it could be interesting.
Do you ever know what he's going to say?
You're right. Sometimes I wish I had a mute button for him. Anyway,
Thank you, Sally. It was really nice to hear your story. I know you were one of the first people that I met, and you're right. The place definitely says welcome, and definitely has a lot to do with your open arms. Thank you for serving on the vestry too.
You're welcome.
Douglas.
So it's my turn. You've ceded control.
Yes. Your turn.
Like, you guys are doing the Archie and Edith thing. I'm just moderating.
So knowing that this could end up being, or will be on YouTube, I structured my comments maybe a little bit more broadly, but it still intertwines my time in Nativity and a little bit of my faith journey. And as everybody here knows, there are really three dimensions to the Episcopal Church as it defines its brand in this world, and that's tradition, reason, and scripture. And like Sally mentioned, it was really the tradition that is the reason why we came to Nativity. We moved to Minnesota in the summer of '80. In 1982, we built a house here in Burnsville. And quite simply, when my mom came to visit, she expected to go to church. And so back in those days, there were yellow pages. We looked in the yellow pages for where there's an Episcopal church in Burnsville. We went there, especially we went there when my mom was in town. And we had picked the Episcopal church because Sally and I were married in that church down in Des Moines. We became good members in good standing at Nativity when in around 1984, Lee Kapitsky, who was a senior warden I think at that time, gave us a key and told us it was our turn to clean the place. And so it was a nice touch. It let us know that we had been invited in as one of the families in a very much a family-sized church. So then on to this idea of reason. And reason is the brand descriptor of why we chose the Episcopal Church over the Catholic Church. Because I am my mother's son, and she got kicked out of the Catholic Church for marrying my dad. And that never seemed quite right to me. My mom was also one of the first women to graduate from Penn State in accounting. And she went to work in New York City for one of the big 3 accounting firms. And she expected to receive equal pay. And right now, Sally and I are watching The Amazing Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah.
And that's about a marvelous.
Mrs. Maisel.
I got the Mrs. Maisel right. But it was cast in about the same time when my mom would have been about that age. And it talked a lot about the traditions at that time. And I know that my mom made a point of asking the guys what she was getting paid at, or what the guys were getting paid at Pricewaterhouse, and then demanded the same pay, and got it. So
Wow.
so that was 1952, and reason over doctrine is bred into me. Okay. Next is scripture, and this is the tough one. The Bible seems to be a big deal in the church. And somehow it seems to be at its core, but for me, it's a difficult set of books. And taken together with the Psalms and the words of the music, it can be hard to understand what Christianity is about. That's my take on it. And though I didn't say it in the past, it's also the reason why I thought about quitting the church. It's just too confusing. The language is too opaque. And while the liturgy can be comforting, it can also be very boring to me to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. So why did I stay despite my frustration with the Bible, the Psalms, the lyrics, the repetitive liturgy that often leaves you unable to distinguish one Sunday from the next? Why did I bother with church? And that is why did I bother with church? That's a whole different list of things. So it came down to fellowship, my life, and my understanding of God. So Nativity brought me these things, and I feel an obligation to help this institution, this church, and this community to offer the same to others. Fellowship. I have friends and acquaintances here. We have parties, we see each other and can recollect when we have shared dinner, a camping trip, hope for the Twins, or frustration with the Vikings. You can find these same things at a bar or with neighbors and friends, and I hope you do. The difference is fellowship at church is the most likely place for you to find a friend who can help you in times of trouble. Yep.
Good thing he has it written down. Do you want me to read them for you?
Nope. That's fair.
Okay.
Okay. So now I get on to my life. Jesus asked us to hold 2 laws above all the others. And on all these laws hang me up. And know that all the other laws hang on these. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And I'm not sure that he was quoted quite right. I think he meant love God and love yourself so that you can also love your neighbor. The reason I think this is true is because if you only have to love your neighbor as you love yourself, if you're hating yourself, then that sets the bar pretty low for how you treat your neighbor. And depression for me was hating myself. And at the time, I was about 50 years old. And I don't know why, but I could see and feel the symptoms everywhere I turned. Outside of myself, that's how I felt most of it, because when you are married, Scripture says, 2 become 1, and I was not treating Sally any better than I was treating myself. Okay, I got to hit the reset button here a little bit and get my voice back.
We don't make sure.
Okay, yep, okay. She was about ready to leave me, and so was I. I was good at masking my symptoms from my kids, my workplace, and my community. They depended on me to work in our collective best interest. I asked our priest for help, and she wrapped her arms around me, both literally and figuratively. And she knew me well enough to offer me immensely helpful books and gathered our church friends around me to save me from myself. This church and our priest saved my life. I will work hard so that our church is there for others, no matter their circumstance. Doing a lot of things.
He's doing okay, but he's very emotional.
Thank
Now
you for
on to the
sharing.
third part here, okay? Understanding my God. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost is a difficult concept. And back at our old church, there was a cross that's now at the back of our new church. And the morning sun used to shine through that cross at our old building. And back in those days, I looked for answers about who God is while staring through that cross as the sun came through in the morning. It was really a beautiful design to that building. It was at a time when I was watching my dad being tortured by heart attacks over the course of 6 years. And no matter how hard I tried, I could not understand that God was either powerful, merciful, or loving. I was also pretty confused by the Bible that gives God credit for the triumphs, yes, it's pretty confusing for, I was also pretty confused by a Bible that gave God credit for the triumphs of one group of people over another, and the miracles that require power beyond comprehension. Lots of time in church, not too much clarity. So I used to be a pretty smart engineer, and now I'm retired, so I'm not so smart anymore.
That's not true.
But at any rate, I led engineers and architects that designed buildings here and around the globe. And it gave me a chance to see the world without joining the Navy. I also saw people engaged in religion in every culture. And that told me there was something to religion, and maybe I just needed to think about it differently. So I looked to Eastern culture, and the differences can be summarized by something as simple as a saw. Our saw is cut when you push, their saw is cut when you pull. And that difference in how to look at life led me to reading a couple of books. And one of them was The Tao Te Ching, and the other was The Stories Out of the Art of War. And both of these are ancient Chinese books. And it was the Tao Te Ching that helped me understand God as a verb. And that verb in English is love. It was also The Art of War that helped me understand the relationship between people and societies. And these two books together helped me wrap my head around a few tenets that I hold on to in my life. And one of them is a relatively new quote, but it captures it nicely. If it ain't about love, it ain't about God. And I don't know if that's just a bumper sticker or whether somebody actually got credit for writing that.
I think it's been attributed to Bishop Curry.
Okay.
Oh, really?
So,
Yeah, it's on a T-shirt down at the cathedral, I think.
all right. So I buy into that, where the bishop's going with it. And we're all in this together by ourselves is a Lily Tomlin quote. And I think that the reason it's on my list is I think the together part is how God binds us, and we're in it by ourselves because we're personally responsible for our actions and subscribing or giving ourselves to God. And my little quip is the angrier you are, the further from God that you are. You cannot be loving people if you're mad at them. Just doesn't compute. So, and then finally, I'm an old Boy Scout. I'm an old Boy Scout leader, and the Scout law gives you a quick checklist too. So then finally, there's a third book that helped me, and that was The Power of Now. And it gave me a simple test to know if I've given my life to God. I ask if I'm living in the present. The past can be the past can be fun or painful to visit, but it is behind us, and there is little use in trying to recreate it. The future has yet to unfold, so there is nothing to worry about. And then there is now. And when you live there, you live with God. So my word this year is contagious. And, we just worked on that last week, right? And I want to share my church with you in our church. I want to help you make it a meaningful part of your life. And for me, it's been a source of friendships. It's preserved my life. And I enjoy the peace of God that surpasses all understanding most of my hours. For this, I am thankful. So, that's my
Wow.
2
Thank
pages.
you two so very, very much. What a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing at such a deep level there, Doug and Sally. It really holds your story in a sacred space. Thank you so much. I know some of you all have walked this journey with them, and if you'd like to unmute and ask them a question or contribute to this, we got about 7 or 8 minutes here before we move on over to worship.
A comment. I remember Doug talking one time about how his mother basically expected him to be donating financially to the church, probably more than what he was at the time. I mean,
Way more.
Yes.
Yep. He told me our giving level back in the early 80s wasn't cutting it.
Yes.
And it really was a change in mindset. What we had to do is figure out that we could not do cost of living index increases to start to meet some sort of a financial commitment to the church. So what we did is added 1% of wage a year until we got to what we thought was a reasonable contribution for the church. And then there was a little bit of encouragement along the way, maybe particularly from Ann Miner Pearson, to make sure you, well, not so much the tithing as giving and enjoy the feeling of giving. And over the years, we've done that with both the church and Scouts in particular.
Carrie, did you have something you wanted to?
I was just going to say thank you. And, walking on this road for a long time, I've sometimes, Doug, I've thought, what's going on in there?
Oh,
In a loving way. I love you guys. But, I know you like to tease and joke. And so, anyways, thank you for sharing your story. It's helpful. And I appreciate hearing more about what's going on inside. And
he's a very complex person. I'm not.
I know. And once in a while you drop little mysterious things in front of me and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But thank you. I know that was vulnerable and it's very special. So thank you. Both of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're all complex, but some of us wear it. The water runs a little deeper, right?
Yes. Yep.
Harder to see what's going on the surface.
Well, now I know I need to wear bigger boots when I'm in your presence there, Doug.
And when I see the two of you, I do think of deep servanthood, and it's a high bar. So thank you for what you do for our community.
Yeah.
It's been a fun journey together.
Yeah.
Anna?
Yes, thank you, both of you. I really enjoyed your stories this morning. And Sally, I think one thing you didn't mention is that you're, or maybe both of you are in charge of the brew crew at the church.
Oh, yes, I did start the brew crew.
Yes.
I forgot about that since we don't have it right now, but
But
yeah,
that isn't important, and that's how you started being part of the fellowship group too, because you went downstairs and had coffee when you
yes.
at
I
Doug-
wasn't even a coffee drinker then. So,
at Doug's persistence. So I really appreciate that, and
yeah,
I appreciate your story. And Doug, I'd like to say thank you too, because Doug has been the person who's been calling me from church to check on me all this time. And I know he was concerned at one point in time because I had said I wasn't going to go out and get the vaccine right away. But I want you to know that I am going to, as soon as it's available, I'm going to get the vaccine. So
And I think it will help take care of all of us.
yes, yes, it will.
thank you for being on the brew crew, Anna.
Oh, thank you. I look
Thanks.
forward to it, being on it again and probably relearning how to do it.
I think we're all gonna have to relearn that.
Mm-hmm.
And just real quick, I want to see the brew crew diversify. We went to church in Assisi over in Italy right after I retired. And the little Episcopal church there, they don't do coffee and cookies. They do wine and cheese.
Ah,
Yeah,
Of course, they're Episcopalians.
but it was reminiscent of some of the members of our church. They go out for lunch after church.
Yep.
After their wine and cheese, they invite people to go out to lunch with them. So we went out to lunch with these people too. So
Yeah. And actually, when we were there that day, I think about 30 went out to lunch together
oh,
at a little restaurant night in Assisi.
Well, when the restaurants are open and it's all safe, I vote yes on all of the above. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add about their time while they interacted with Sally and Doug?
one thing we didn't mention is our sons and their involvement at church.
Mm-hmm.
They both were very involved at church, especially when they got older and got into the youth group. And Logan would acolyte, and John they both got very involved with Teens Encounter Christ, which was a long tradition of our church to go to the one in St. Paul, to St. John the Evangelist, is where they would meet. And it started way back with the Borton girls. I think they were like the first people who went there. And then they were our, some of the people that went to tech, they were our babysitters. The Borton girls weren't, but like Anne Malone's daughter, Katie, was one of our babysitters, and Courtney. So they still have some lifelong friends, I think, that they keep in touch with from that time. And I think they both went on mission trips throughout, like especially Logan they went to ones around the country, like Florida and Asheville, North Carolina, and Chicago. And by the time John was involved with youth group, they started going more locally and I helped with the youth group when he was in youth group. And the mission trip I went on, they went up to the Cass Lake, and we helped paint and do some work on the little Episcopal church up in Cass Lake.
Yep.
So those were really good experiences for me to
Mm-hmm.
be involved with the youth and see their, perspective and to listen to them. And we did go through some rough spots when John was in youth group. We had some real heavy discussions because there were some youth that were having some mental health issues at the time. And so that was an experience that really impacted my life too. So
I've had a few lifelong friends out of the deal.
Yes,
So
we have a lot of lifelong friends from Nativity.
Judy, did you have something you were gonna?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you both for sharing your stories and the joys and the challenges as well. And I really look forward to getting to know you both better.
thanks, Judy.
A hard time to join a church, isn't it? During a pandemic.
Yes, it is.
It is, Sally.
Yeah.
But thank goodness for Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sally, I want to thank you both for this today. I always knew that there was a huge heart in you, in both of you, really. Doug and I have had some interesting conversations over the years from time to time, and Sally, you've always been a rock. And I do remember shopping
Yeah.
for our family table. That was quite an experience, and
Yes.
I love you both. Thank you very much for sharing. It
You're
was
welcome.
beautiful. And of course, we'll see you later.
Yes.
Okay, I'll mute myself again.
Well, thank you so much. And coming up next week would be Miss Carrie. She'll be sharing her story. And we'll take a little break from that during Lent. And then we'll come back to it in May after Easter, I think. But stay tuned to the e-notes for the actual schedule of who we've got going on. And if you're interested in telling your story, we can certainly record it and then play it. And then you can be there for it if you decide that you want to do that. We aren't doing it in person, I would be Zooming and then recording that and then sharing it. But if anybody's interested in doing that, that'd be great. So, well, thanks a lot, you guys. And God bless you. And thank you so much for sharing and for all that you do for our church and every little thing that you're not letting everybody know that you do. You just really have grateful and generous servant hearts. And Carrie was right. It's a big bill to fill. So thank you so much for witnessing. Appreciate that. Especially as a new Episcopalian myself, I do appreciate the witness. All right, so we're going to head on over to church and we'll see you there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.